Welcome to the Design for Living Big Book study. Gord and myself, I guess Bill was supposed to read it. I will be sharing our own experience of how the Big Book has helped us in the removal of our DOC, which is drug of choice, or actually our substance of no choice. But more importantly, how the directions contained within the Big Book have helped change all aspects of our lives. We will share our pain and successes as it relates to our own journey and the hundreds of men and women we have had the pleasure of helping through sponsorship or otherwise. Bill, myself, the THEUDRCAST, we're not affiliated with any 12-step program. We neither endorse nor discredit any method of recovery. We are supportive of all paths to recovery. We're just passionate about what works for us. The opinions shared in this study are solely of that of the person sharing them. All right. And with that, let's get started. We're going to take a break around 8 o'clock. And who knows? I mean, with Bill not being here, it might not even go to 9:15. It's hard to say, right? He's laughing on there. I'm glad to see that. All right, step 6. So I know Bill read a couple paragraphs last week on step 6. Yeah? And people were here last week? Okay, so he did do that, right? We're going to read them again. And we're going to go through, Bill and I talked yesterday, just to be totally transparent, we're going to go through step 6 in the 12 by 12. Does everyone have a 12 by 12? By the way, I probably should ask that. If you don't, there are some here. Do you need one? Does anyone need one? Yeah? Okay, excellent. We're on page 63, and that starts step 6. We're going to go through step 6 in this 12 by 12. Hi there. And then next week we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to talk more about steps 4 and 5 because I want to just really magnify when it talks about instincts in step 6, okay? Because next week Bill and I are going to talk about that a lot more. Let's get started, I guess. Step 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Ready being a very, very important word. How do we get ready, anyone? Anyone? Some people said pray. What did you say? Exactly, 4 and 5. This is a step that separates, I'm sorry, ladies, it says here the men from the boys. What I love to say now, even though I don't like changing the readings, but from child to adult. What separates the children from the adults, is so declares the well-loved clergyman who happens to be one of AA's greatest friends. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly. There's a lot in that one sentence, isn't there? Step 6, on all his faults, without any reservations, whatsoever, has indeed come a long way spiritually and is therefore entitled to be called a man who is sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own Creator. So I would like you to roll back to page 58 very quickly, okay? Not going to do this a lot because Bill and I we're going to get into step 4, but I want to read you a little something on page 58. The first full paragraph. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. God, I love that. Therefore, our first practical move toward humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies. No defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is, but we shall have to do more than see. The objective look at ourselves we achieved in step 4 was, after all, only a look. All of us saw, for example, that we lacked honesty and tolerance, that we were beset at times by attacks of self-pity or delusions of personal grandeur. But while this was a humiliating experience, humiliating, not humility, humiliating experience, it didn't necessarily mean that we had yet acquired much actual humility. Though now recognized, our defects were still there. Something had to be done about them, and we soon found that we could not wish or will them away by ourselves. Do you remember when we were talking about, we were in step 3 and moving towards step 4, and I talked about how we were powerless over alcohol and that we would then talk later on about being powerless over our resentments. Do you guys remember that, some of you? And then I said, and then we'll take it further and we'll talk about being powerless over our defects of character. Well, this is what it's all about. I am absolutely powerless over my defects, which is why I need to repeatedly do step 6. I need to repeatedly work on the building of character that it takes to have a psychic change. And that doesn't come overnight. Okay. Of course, the often disputed question of whether God can and will, under certain conditions, remove defects of character will be answered with a prompt affirmative by almost any AA member. Oh yeah, God can definitely remove my defects of character. How do we know this? Because I don't have the obsession to drink anymore, right? My life has been saved. It's going to go on to say that here. To him, this proposition will be no theory at all. It will be just about the largest fact in his life. He will usually offer this proof in a statement like this. Sure, I was beaten, absolutely licked. My own willpower just wouldn't work on alcohol. Change of scene, best efforts of family, friends, doctors, clergymen got no place with my alcoholism. I simply couldn't stop drinking, and no human being could seem to do the job for me. But when I became willing to clean house and then asked a higher power, God as I understood him, to give me a release, my obsession to drink vanished. It was lifted right out of me. In AA meetings all over the world, statements just like this are heard daily. It is plain for everybody to see that each sober AA member has been granted a release from this very obstinate and potentially fatal obsession. So in a very complete and literal way, all AAs have become entirely ready to have God remove the mania for alcohol from their lives, and God has proceeded to do exactly that. Having been granted a perfect release from alcoholism, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve by the same means a perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? This is a riddle of our existence, the full answer to which may be only in the mind of God. Nevertheless, at least a part of the answer to it is apparent to us. When men and women pour so much alcohol into themselves that they destroy their lives, they commit a most unnatural act, defying their instinctive desire for self-preservation. They seem bent upon self-destruction. They work against their own deepest instinct, which is what? Survival. Exactly. As they are humbled by the terrific beating administered by alcohol, the grace of God can enter them and expel their obsession. Here, their powerful instinct to live on can cooperate fully with their Creator's desire to give them new life. For nature and God alike abhor suicide. All right, stop and go back. It's a lot of information. Looks like people are getting set up with the link on here for the 12 by 12, which is awesome. Thank you, Molly. So this is the step that separates the men from the boys, or as you ladies would probably prefer me to say, the children from the adults. Why is that? Well, here's what I believe it to be. I believe that, and I've talked about this before, that children take this easiest, softest way. Children don't understand exaggerations of instincts or underdevelopment of instincts. Children just do what's in front of them, and they do what feels good, right? So if I were to use the weasel clause, which I love to call it, and I've talked about here before, hey, I only cheated on my wife, 3 times this month. I used to do it like 9 times. But hey, progress, not perfection, right? That's a child's attitude. If I want to build character, I have to strive for perfection. No? That's tough because nobody's perfect. But I have to try repeatedly. I never gain perfection, but I try repeatedly. And that makes me a man. That makes me an adult. It makes me somebody who has enough willingness and honesty to do that. And then this guy says, without any reservations whatsoever, whatever it says in the book, but whatsoever, I'm not sure I'm buying that. I have reservations all the time about being a good guy, especially when I don't like the result. However, if I want to live this life, I want to stay sober, I want to be of good service, come on in. We're using the 12 by 12 if you have one. If not, maybe sit close to someone that does. Okay. I have reservations all the time. How about you guys? Zoom? When you're dealing with defects of character, you're in the middle of it and you know that you need to change your attitude, but it's not going to work out well for you if you do. Do you have reservations? Do you think twice? Do you think twice about maybe changing your behavior? Or do I keep it up because this is working for me? You guys understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I try to do it without reservation. Maybe I'm just not grown enough yet. Maybe when I'm 30 years sober, I might do it without any reservations. I still struggle with that, but I repeatedly try. And that allows me a gift. I don't like to be called a man who's sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own creator, but I have become one. I have become a man who wants to be of service naturally. I naturally choose to do the right thing much more than I used to. Let's put it that way. A lot more than I used to. I was driving today and I was behind a guy that I thought was an idiot, and I called him an idiot. And very, very quickly, I went, oh, you're doing it again. Stop. God, take this from me, please. I'm acting like an asshole. Why is my perception of these situations so bad? Please teach me how to change this in me. Because I've been like this a long time. I've been learning that my screen is frozen. I look like this. I hope that's not how. Oh, there, I'm back. I hope you didn't have to look at this for too long. But I try to learn about my behavior every day, and I try to curb my behavior every day. Do you know why I do this? Because I need to change my thinking, and the only way that I can change my thinking is by changing my behavior. I can't think my way into good behavior. I can behave my way into different thinking. And so many people, well, that's a generalization. I'm not going to say that. Thanks, Billy. I thought that way for a long period of time, that I could think my way into better behavior. A gentleman came here this evening before any of you were here, and he was in the wrong place. He was looking for the smart recovery room. And he looked at me and he said, I'll give you a minute to convince me of why I should stay in this meeting or go down to the recovery meeting. And you know what my response was to him? No. I'm not here to convince you of either thing. I'll support you in whatever you choose. Can't think our way into being a better human being. As it turned out, I sat here and talked to him for 15 minutes, and he might show up next week, he said. Who knows if he will? I don't know. I'm not God. But I told him, I'm not going to try and tell you anything. And I actually read him the disclaimer. I said, you want to know how we are here, Billy and I, my buddy and I? We're just doing this because we think we need to. Here's the disclaimer, and I read him the disclaimer, how none of my views have anything to do with any program. We're just here sharing what worked for us. That's it. Behavior change has started to change the way that I think. Not enough yet, by the way. I want to learn more. I want to behave better. I want to think differently. Driving in my car today was a prime example of that. But other examples are, I feel sorry for myself often. I get angry quickly still. It's not as flamboyant and outrageous as it used to be. I don't go violent anymore. So it's softened, but it's still there. And that's because my mind's, I have a lot of unlearning of learned behaviors to do. And the only way to get there is to practice. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly, step 6, on all his faults. And by the way, that'll take time too. I started with my driving. I'm still working on it. I've become a much nicer person to my wife, but don't get me in traffic, man. I tell you, it's a struggle. I'm still on 63. Yeah. I just went backwards to talk about it. Yeah, sorry I should have maybe said that. So, without any reservations whatsoever, or at least without as many reservations as you can possibly try, you've come a long way spiritually. And I have come a long way spiritually. Bill knew me when I wasn't in recovery. Bill knew me when I was trying to be in recovery. He can tell you. If any of you want to know, Bill, I give you a full-fledged freedom to tell anyone what a piece of shit I was. Because I was a terrible human being. I laugh at it because I'm free of that today. I'm a different human being. I am a spiritual guy, and I am definitely a man who is sincerely trying to grow. Hello, gentlemen, welcome. Grow in the likeness and image of my own Creator. A Creator that I still don't totally understand. But a Creator I've recognized I don't need to understand. Why? Well, because I have years of experience looking backwards in my life, seeing that it works. That gives me the courage to continue to try. Repeatedly, step 6, on all my faults. We're on page 63 in the 12 by 12. Halfway down. Of course, the often disputed question of whether God can and will, under certain conditions, remove defects of character will be answered with a prompt affirmative. This is fairly straightforward. The next couple of paragraphs is pretty straightforward. It's talking about the obsession to alcohol being removed. Why was that so easy? Why do I fight to have to be such a better human being? Why is that so difficult when God could just remove the obsession? This is where we start to get into instincts. And the instinct to survive should be stronger because it says God abhors suicide and the like. God doesn't like to see his children, if you will, however you see that. The universe doesn't want to see my energy destroyed. I don't care how you look at it. The Creator doesn't want to see you wasting your life away. however you see that instinct to survive helped God get rid of the desire and the obsession to drink, because drinking is killing us. We've learned that, right? We've learned that drinking will kill us. We've talked about all of this in the previous chapters, right? And we'll talk again about it next week. I guarantee it. So when we actually finally come to terms with it and we finally want to change and we surrender ourselves to trying to become alive again instead of wanting to die, God says, that's more like it. Sure, here you go. We have to do a little work to keep it up. We have to do a lot of work to keep it up, actually. But when we start, we get a reprieve. It's almost like my higher power saying, you know what, I see you're trying. It's okay. It's okay. You'll be okay. But then all my faults and my learned behaviors start to come out. Why? Because I'm raw. I don't have drinks or drugs to deal with that shit anymore. Ooh. Thank goodness I found a higher power. And thank goodness I continued on with these steps, because I know people that lived in sobriety for 30 years without finding recovery. I know people at 20 years that put a gun in their mouth and said, I can't go on. It's because we don't have, the drugs were our solution to that. And once those are gone, I'm just left there bare with myself in my glaring defects of character and no idea how to change. And that's what this program, this Design for Living, gives us. So God makes our obsession disappear. It, so that we can live and start to learn some more. The mania, I love that word, the mania for alcohol, he removes it from their lives. He's done exactly that. Having been granted a perfect release from alcoholism, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve by the same means a perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? This is the riddle of our existence, the full answer to which may be only in the mind of God. Nevertheless, at least a part of that answer to it is apparent to us. So when I was told by my sponsor that I had to do this step 4, I wasn't really happy about that. Anyone happy to do a step 4? Yeah. I was actually. I can tell you I did a step 4 this year, another one. And I was actually really happy to do it. That was different. The first one though, no, I dreaded that experience a lot. The only part I was happy about was I got to write down all the names of people I hated. Sons of bitches. I'm going to tell them, right, Billy? I'm going to show them. Oh, wait a second. I have to look at this from a different angle? Uh-oh. So yeah, work. The work had to come. And unfortunately, the only way for me to learn that is with pain. If God removed all my defects of character along with my obsession to drink, there would be nothing for me to do. I'd be a perfect human being. I'd live a happy life. I didn't deserve that. I did too many selfish things. I did too many shitty acts. So I had to work for it. And that's what this is all about. We're going to continue reading, by the way, at the bottom of page 64, because a lot of that's pretty basic stuff, right? I think we've gotten the point that I'm trying to put across, yeah? God helps us not commit suicide, not kill ourselves, but now we're going to have to work at becoming better human beings and finding humility, right? Yeah. But most of our other difficulties don't fall under such a category at all. Every normal person wants, for example, to eat, to reproduce, to be somebody in the society of his fellows. Do you see how those are also instincts? We need to feed ourselves. We need to reproduce. That's a human instinct to create life, to go on. Pride. He wishes to be reasonably safe and secure as he tries to attain these things. Indeed, God made him that way. He did not design man to destroy himself by alcohol, but he did give man instincts to help them stay alive. It is nowhere evident, at least in this life, that our Creator expects us fully to eliminate our instinctual drives. So far as we know, it is nowhere on the record that God has completely removed from any human being all his natural drives, all her natural drives. That is telling us that it's okay to have instincts. God gave them to us. Later in the book and later in this study, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the proper use of our will. But we're not there yet because we're still trying to find humility. We're still trying to learn how to behave properly and build some character and become someone that has integrity and lives by these principles. At this point, if I tried to use my will in the correct means, I would be wrong. And I'll tell you why. It's going to read about it next. Since most of us are born with an abundance of natural desires, it isn't strange that we often let these this is really important, underline this, double underline this, highlight it. We often let these far exceed their intended purpose. Well, right? I like to eat. I eat too much. Now I spent the last 2 years trying to get rid of it. Sucks. But I often let it far exceed their intended purpose. When they drive us blindly, or we willfully demand that they supply us with more satisfactions or pleasures than are possible or due to us, that is the point at which we depart. We say goodbye from the degree of perfection that God wishes for us here on earth. That is the measure of our character defects, or, if you wish, of our sins. We all have instincts, but being alcoholics and addicts, we take everything too far. Do you agree with that? Does everyone on Zoom agree with that? Billy agrees with that. I'm not seeing anyone shaking their head or anything, but maybe that's because it's frozen. I'm not sure. You guys all agree with that? Yeah? I mean, the guy sitting in the pen, you got to agree with that, right? I mean, that's what got you there. The over-exaggeration of a desire to get what's rightfully ours when it's not rightfully ours. I've been there. No judgment. If we ask, God will certainly forgive our derelictions, but in no case does he render us white as snow and keep us that way without our cooperation. That's the key to that sentence, without our cooperation. I hear old-timers talk about never rendering us white as snow, but rarely do I hear them state the without our cooperation part. Is such a critical part in that sentence. Without our cooperation, that implies that I have to do something. I have to work. Faith without works is dead, right? That is something we are supposed to be willing to work towards ourselves. He asks only that we try as best we know how to make progress in the building of character. But remember, progress striving for perfection, not progress half-assed doing what I want most of the time, but hey, I've improved a little bit. It's progress, striving for perfection. I'm trying to be a perfect human being. The humility starts to come in when I recognize that I have to continue to try, but I will never, ever get there. There's a gift in that. There's a gift in recognizing how important it is to just constantly try to be better than I am right now. That's hard. Nothing that is worthwhile in this thing has ever come to me easily. But I can tell you that the life that I live today is incredible because I went through what God wanted me to go through, even though I didn't like it. You're going to continue to hear that. I'm sure you'll continue to hear that from Bill. I know it. I've heard him say it many times. You know, this isn't about getting what I want. This is about striving for perfection and doing what I have to do. I love this. I love this chapter so much. If I start beating a dead horse, just tell me to shut up, okay? Because if I'm going too on, this stuff really hits me in my heart. If you've ever read, has anyone ever read Drop the Rock? I bet you guys have. Yeah, Dave, you've read it. You've read it. It's a great book about step 7. And then she came out with another book called Drop the Rock, The Ripple Effect. And if you want, it's more along the lines of step 10-ish stuff, but really it just really goes into more detail about over-exaggeration of our instincts and the underdevelopment of our instincts. Sometimes, like, say, you know, I got buddies that their defects are sex. One guy in particular, I remember saying that several times. But, you know, he over-exaggerates that. And he gets with lots of women, and that's caused him lots of pain, right? And he's learned to, you know, love who he's with and become a better human. He's worked at becoming a better guy and not acting out in that instinct, right? Because it's over-exaggerated. It's more than he deserves, right? But guess what? There's also shortcomings. I know everyone says that Bill writes about, you know, he just uses different words because he was an incredible writer, and he says that it's defects, and then they say it's shortcomings. And here's my theory. This is my opinion alone. I believe that the defects of character, from reading in that book, by the way, if you want to read more, get it. The Ripple Effect, it's incredible. But the defects of character are the over-exaggerated, like I was just talking about, the guy that goes and has sex with lots of women all the time, as an example. But then there's the people that are shy, and they can't even talk to a girl or a guy. They can't even look somebody in the face. And that's caused them all sorts of issues. Common manifestations, if you will. You remember that in step 4? The common manifestations, the simple patterns in our life that cause us to fail? Well, sometimes that shyness, that timidness, can't look, no confidence is so, that shortcoming is so underdeveloped, the instinct is so underdeveloped that they can't talk to people. It causes them pain in their life. I think that's a shortcoming. I think the defect is over-exaggerated, and a shortcoming is underdeveloped. There's both, I think. I believe that. No matter what, when these things drive us blindly, it says here, right? Or we willfully demand that they supply us with more satisfactions or pleasures that are possible or due to us more than we deserve, that's the point where we depart from what God intended for us, right? So step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning on this lifetime job. Where do we hear that again in the book? Where do we hear that in the big book later? Lifetime job, lifetime. Where do we hear that? Step 10. This shall continue for our lifetime, right? This whole thing, Bill opened my eyes to the step 3 stuff. I thank you, Billy. I love you, man, for that. God put you in my path for that, because I didn't even recognize that step 3 is just a theoretical step 10. I had no idea, and now I'm alive to this, and it's got me looking at things completely differently, and the act of step 3, the actual work of step 3 shows up after we work on ourselves and we start to find humility. We start to gain this desire to seek and do God's will. We clear up the wreckage of our past, and this shall continue for our lifetime. This work at becoming a better human being will continue for our lifetime, and I now know that I need God's help with that. I can't do it on my own. I just have to stay willing and stay honest. How does the honesty come into play? Well, there it is again. Yeah, do you got a microphone, please? Hang on. We want the people online to hear you too.
It's the first step.
It's the principle behind the first step. That's right. Although, the principle behind the first step is honesty, but at that point in the game, it is more about being honest with myself, coming to terms with needing to surrender. This honesty is more about character building. It's more about me working in alignment with a higher power and becoming aware when my brain tells me I want to go this way and it says, whoa, dude, that's not the right way. And I may want to go this way because this way looks better, right? Oh, I'm going to get bonuses if I squeeze this claim for more money. Or I'm going to, get that new motorcycle if I, don't give my daughters this money for this or whatever it is, right? It looks good because I want the bike and I want the bonuses and I want the stuff. But the right move is honesty. And it's recognizing the honesty in myself that, no, I've got to choose this path because that's why I'm here. Principled, integrity, honesty, hope, faith, perseverance, courage, brotherly love, awareness, service, and so on. And that's why step 10 is such a beautiful gift. I know we're not at step 10, but I can't help but take you there. Step 10 is such a beautiful gift because I have people in my life at that point that I can call up and say, hey, Bill, what do you think about this? Did I behave properly? Did I make the right choice? Because my mind tells me that I maybe should have made the other one, but I've come a long way. I think I did make the right choice. Doesn't feel the best, but I think I made the right choice. Can you confirm? Guess what? More times than not now, my friends or Billy confirm that I made the right choice. That's taken a long time. It's taken a long time. And once in a while, they tell me I didn't. Or they tell me, well, wait and see. You're going to find out. That's more the truth than anything. They tell me, wait and see, because you'll find out. Because I find out all sorts of crazy stuff, uncomfortable feelings, and terrible situations when I make the wrong choices, when I become selfish and I let that guide me. And yes, it still happens. Anyway, I'm beating a dead horse now, aren't I? Everyone nod and say, "Yep, move on." Nobody's nodding. I don't get it. Okay. Where was I? So we're going to go over this last paragraph again. So step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude. The best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning on this lifetime job. Lifetime job. Continue for a lifetime. This is never going to be over. I'm always going to need to improve. This does not mean that we expect all our character defects to be lifted out of us as the drive to drink was. A few of them may be, but with most of them we shall have to be content with patient improvement. The key words entirely ready underline the fact that we want to aim at the very best we can, we know, or we can learn. And right beside that, I have weasel clause, because I was a weasel for a long time. I always wanted to half-ass this life. I always wanted to get what was mine, and I only wanted to do what I absolutely needed to get by, and that's a fact. And guess what also is a fact? I never got to recover. Nothing. Absolutely, Ida. Half measures availed us nothing, Ida said. And that is absolutely true, and it took me 27 years to learn it. 27 painful years. How many of us this degree of readiness? In an absolute sense, practically nobody has it. Now, you want to talk about honesty? That's an honest statement. That is honest. If we were recognizing that I probably don't have the readiness to be entirely ready to have God remove all my defects, to be entirely ready and willing to do all the work to change my character, it's humbling, isn't it? It was for me. Definitely humbling. The best we can do with all the honesty that we can summon is to try to have it. Try repeatedly. You see how that? He keeps bringing that up. The very beginning and now in the middle. We try. Even then, the best of us will discover to our dismay that there's always a sticking point. Oh, the sticking points. That's caused me a lot of pain. The sticking point is a point at which we say, no, I can't give this defect up yet. And we shall often tread on even more dangerous ground when we cry, I will never give this up. Such is the power of our instincts to overreach themselves. Exaggerated instinct. Defects of character. No matter how far we have progressed, desires will always be found which oppose the grace of God. I could give you a lot of examples, but the only ones that are coming to my mind are dirty, so I'm not going to do that to you right now. Some who feel they have done well may dispute this, so let's try to think this through a little further. Practically everybody wishes to be rid of his most glaring and destructive handicaps. And why do we want to be rid of them? I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to ask you, why do we want to be rid of our most glaring defects? You know, some said it because it can hurt other people. What's that? It's a block from God. We don't want to be blocked from God anymore. It could lead us back to relapse. That's good. These are all good answers. But the reality is, the reason we want to be rid of our most glaring defects is because they know they've caused us not to be successful, and we are very, very selfish people. And I want to be successful. So now I've learned that if I get rid of my glaring defects, I could be successful. It's very selfish. I just want to be successful. I don't know at this point. Like, these are all great answers. I don't know at this point I'm blocked from God. I don't really, yeah, you told me that, but whatever. But I'm starting to recognize my defects. And when I get angry, that's why I've lost jobs. Because in step 4, I started looking at the common manifestations. I started looking at the patterns in my life that caused my failures, i.e., defects of character. And I didn't like it. And I just want that to stop. It's still very selfish at this point. Which, by the way, is okay. Because we're all just humans trying to get better, right? And we got to go through this process. Practically everybody wishes to be rid of this their most glaring and destructive handicaps. No one wants to be so proud that he is scorned as a braggart, right? Nobody likes being called egotistical. Nor so greedy he's labeled a thief. Nobody wants to be told they're a thief or a con artist, used salesman, used car salesman attitude, right? It's demeaning. It doesn't feel good. No one wants to be angry enough to murder or lustful enough to rape, gluttonous enough to ruin his health. You see, nobody wants to be those things. But if we continue down this road, that's exactly where we go. To the worst extremes of our characters. For some, it's murders. For some, it's rape. For some, it's getting chubby. For some of it is becoming extremely fat. For some, it's getting, transmitted diseases. Nobody wants that. So it's really quite natural that we want to change, because I don't want to be that guy. No one wants to be agonized by the chronic pain of envy or to be paralyzed by sloth, which, by the way, is laziness. Of course, most human beings don't suffer these defects at these rock bottom levels. So that's even harder for us. Because if you call me slothful, I'll say I work every day. But if I'm honest, I'll be like, yeah, but I've been rolling in around 10 o'clock in the morning because I'm the boss. Meanwhile, it's affecting the other people in the office. That was my career. I roll out of bed around 9 because I've been drinking the whole night before. I'd roll into the office at 10, 11 o'clock. I'd bark some orders at my assistant and bark some orders at the office manager. And then I'd go off with clients to the bar. That was the goal. That was the plan. I had no idea why all my clients loved me, but everybody in my office hated me. For years. Common manifestations. People that I worked with couldn't stand to be around me. But I was one of the top producers. That's how I got away with it. Because people put up with me because I was bringing so much revenue to those companies. Until they didn't anymore. Until they just couldn't. It pissed everyone off to a point. Hey, Jed, good to see you. It pissed everyone off to a point where they finally had to get rid of me. Because I was affecting their entire business. And the money that I was bringing in wasn't worth it anymore. You see? But I didn't want to give that up either when I came into, I didn't want to give up being a boss when I came into recovery. And guess what? God saw fit to not let me have a job for like 3 years till I learned humility, till I got on the tools, until I started digging ditches myself and digging post holes myself, building fences by hand, hanging drywall, painting, learning, having to go back and fix the drywall because I screwed it up. And I got paid to do it, so I have to fix it for free. Sometimes it cost me more than I got. But out of integrity, I went and did it anyway. And guess what I learned out of all that? Humility. I learned how to appreciate people. My first 3 years in recovery were some of the hardest years of my life, or so I thought, when in fact they turned out to be the greatest gift I've ever been given. Don't tell me that there's no God. I couldn't have thought that up. I couldn't have dreamt that up. I would have never dreamt that up. My electric bill getting cut off. I'm driving down the road with the GPS. All of a sudden, it's not working anymore. Why? No data. Didn't pay the bill. Had to wait a few days until I got a check from somebody because I was doing good work. I was learning integrity. So I did get work. I did get paid. But mostly I learned people deserved the best of me. I deserved nothing. That's why I live in grace today. I don't deserve this life I have. That's what grace is. It's an undeserved gift. Really. I'd have to look up, because I'm not like Billy. He even memorizes all that shit. He's so good at it. But I'd have to look up the definition, but it's along those lines. I live this life that I don't totally deserve, and that has offered me a humility, a kindness. It's offered me time to learn and grow. In fact, it's offered me less selfish reasons to grow and more of a desire to do so naturally, but that comes in time. That just comes in time. There's nothing I did other than show up for that to happen. Well, you know what? It's 8 o'clock. I think I should I've beaten the dead horse again, you guys. I'm sorry, but I feel very strongly about this. This chapter is beautiful, man. This is the beginning of the really good stuff. And I love that I get to be here sharing this with you. But let's take a break. Let's come back at 8:20, okay? All right, thank you very much, guys on Zoom, guys in the pen. We'll be back in 17 minutes, okay? Thank you so much.
We'll get back to the podcast in a second. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the guest sharing or myself. We have no affiliation with any 12-step or recovery program. And if you do like our work, please consider visiting BILLWARDLIFE and supporting what we do. Now back to the podcast.
So we left off at, of course, most human beings don't suffer these defects at these rock bottom levels, right? We who have escaped these extremes are apt to congratulate ourselves. Yet, can we? After all, hasn't it been self-interest, pure and simple, that has enabled most of us to escape? Not much spiritual effort is involved in avoiding excesses which will bring us punishment anyway. But when we face up to the less violent aspects of these very same defects, then where do we stand? So we've already talked about the selfishness, right? And I'm glad that we did it before I just read that, because now you know I'm not full of shit, right? I mean, this is straight out of this book. It tells me that I do this selfishly because it helps change my life, and my life was shit, right? But what happens when, you know how I talked earlier about my defects being softened? I don't jump out of my truck anymore and smash on guys' windows and say, get out of the car, and beat the crap out of them anymore. Because I used to. Ask my wife. She witnessed that several times. Guys sitting in their car screaming for the police. You know, what a horrible guy I was. Horrible when I think about it. It gives me I get shudders thinking about it. But now, it's softened. Now I just get annoyed with people and I swear at them in my truck. Or I think I'm better than them because I think I'm a better driver. And yet my family thinks I'm a maniac behind the wheel. They'll say, oh, you've improved a little bit, Dad, but man, you're kind of scary to be in a truck with, right? Because you're all over the road, you know? And they're not wrong. I'm too busy looking around doing my own thing and not caring. But it's softened. You see that my defects of characters have gone from violent to egotistical and annoyed. So when I'm faced with that, where's my willingness? That's what this is asking. Where is your willingness? When it's been softened, are you still as willing to change and grow as a human being? We need to be. I can tell you that right now. I can't tell you that I'm always willing, but I know I need to be. What we must recognize now is that we exalt in some of our defects. We really love them. I love to tell the guy in front of me that he's an idiot driver because it makes me feel better about myself. Who, for example, doesn't like to feel just a little superior to the next fellow, or even quite a lot superior? Isn't it true that we like to let greed masquerade as ambition? Isn't that interesting to think about? To think of liking lust seems impossible. Top of page 67, just to remind everyone. But how many men and women speak love with their lips and believe what they say so that they can hide lust in a dark corner of their minds? What does that mean? It means I act lovingly towards you so I can fuck you later. Excuse my language. But let's be blunt. That's the reality of it. That's the defect of character. Excuse my language. I don't normally curse like that. But I wanted to be very blunt. That is a great example. And even while staying within conventional bounds, many people have to admit that their imaginary sex excursions are apt to be all dressed up as dreams of romance. So what I think I want, I know what I want, but I'm going to try and romance it out of you, right? Self-righteous anger, like me driving in my truck, also can be very enjoyable. In a perverse way, we can actually take satisfaction from the fact that many people annoy us, for it brings a comfortable feeling of superiority. Gossip barbed with our anger. I love that. Gossip barbed with our anger. Has anyone gone fishing and had one of those barbs stick in their fingers? It sucks, right? Yeah, ear, whatever. Leg. I had to pull one out of my nephew's leg one time. That was ugly. But gossip barbed with our anger, because anger's so harming, is a polite form of murder by character assassination. It has its satisfactions for us too. Here we are, not trying to help those we criticize. We are trying to proclaim our own righteousness. How many of you have sat and talked shit about someone to someone else? Show of hands. Show of hands. Yeah, thank you. I saw you guys. We've all done it. We've all done it. A lot of us try not to do it. And you know what? Most of us succeed a lot of the time now. But I still find myself doing it. I've got an operations manager in my office that I love him. He's my right-hand man. He's a good dude. He cares about the company, and he's the only guy I get to talk shit about everyone else to because it stays with him, right? It's not productive, though. When I'm doing that, I should be helping instead. But I talk shit about people because I need to feel superior. Something I'm learning how not to do. And trust me, I used to gossip a lot. especially before I sobered up. And for quite a while in sobriety as well. But I learned that it's harmful. I through pain, and being called out a few times, and losing friends over it, I learned that I needed to gain some willingness and not to do that anymore. And now I do my very, very best not to. And I succeed most of the time. Once in a while, I get caught up in it. I'm going to cruise through a little bit here. When gluttony is less than ruinous, we have a milder word for that too. We call it taking our comfort, right? I like food. I said it earlier, right? We live in a world riddled with envy. To a greater or less degree, everybody is infected with it. You agree? Have we all felt a little bit jealous of my guy that went to Mexico for 2 weeks? Yeah. Or felt jealous that my buddy gets to do recovery and all this stuff for a living the rest of his life because he's so awesome at it? Yeah, I felt that. I have. I wish it were me sometimes, especially when I'm in the midst of a shitty day. From this defect, we must surely get a warped yet definite satisfaction. Else, why would we consume such great amounts of time wishing for what we have not, rather than working for it or angrily looking for attributes we shall never have, instead of adjusting to the fact and accepting it? And how often we worked hard with no better motive than to be secure and slothful or lazy later on. We call that retirement. Consider, too, our talents for procrastination, which is really sloth in 5 syllables. Nearly anyone could submit a good list of such defects as these, and few of us would seriously think of giving them up, at least until they cause us excessive misery. It's exactly what we're talking about, right? I often don't have enough willingness to make these character changes until I can find the pain, until I feel the pain or the discomfort in my life that makes me become willing. Very similar. Now, that guy is gone. He's gone. That was at the back there. But that's also about step 1, right? How long did it take some of us to suffer enough that the next thing I was going to lose became more important for me to get sober? I had to feel that much pain. I don't know, some of you, probably not as much as me, some of you more. I don't judge that on quantity. I judge that on pure quality of the pain. I have been on Main and Hastings when I was younger. You want to talk about pain? That sucks. But it wasn't enough for me to straighten out my life. I had to go to jail, got out of jail, just got back to doing what I was doing before. That wasn't enough for me to straighten out my life. I built a career, pulled myself out of that, refused to give in, to those 12 steps in that design for living because that never worked for me because I never tried it. And for years did better. But then when I finally hit a bottom sufficient enough to sober up, it was because I was about to lose everything I loved and cared about, my family. I was about to lose my wife and daughters. And I realized that I'd become my father, and I did not want to go down that road because I know for the remainder of his life, he regretted it. And that scared me enough to sober up. And I've been sober ever since. So who knows what that pain means for us? Now we're talking about character defects. We're assuming that we're sober at this point. We're assuming that we're doing this because we want to change, and change feels good. So we continue to change, and when we don't feel good, we start to recognize, or we have good people in our lives that help us recognize what we need to change, and we gain a willingness. How often we work hard with no better motive than to be secure and slothful. Yeah, sorry, I read that. excessive misery. Some people, of course, may conclude that they are indeed ready to have all such defects taken from them. But even these people, if they construct a list of still milder defects, will be obliged to admit that they prefer to hang on to some of them. What does that mean? Does anyone have any idea what that means? Our mic runner is not here. Oh, anyone? Keeping a foot in both worlds. That's an interesting statement. Thank you, Ida. Yeah. For me, yeah, it was keeping a foot. Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. Because for me, and I don't think I realized it at the time, that's why I'm just starting, what you just said is hitting me. That's really great. It is keeping a foot in both worlds. Why do I do that? Well, because it worked. My violence worked to keep me safe. Anyone relate to that? Yeah. My anger kept me safe. My ego and cockiness, which I thought was confidence, kept me on top for a very long time. So today when I run a company, sometimes I feel like I need to be overly confident so that people recognize my greatness. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. But that's where it comes from, because that worked for me for years. You want to talk about Maine and Hastings? If you were weak, people knew it. So my anger, it kept me safe. Because when I unloaded on somebody, they went, oh, don't mess with that guy. Right? When we're in recovery and we start to learn about ourselves and we start changing, it's scary. Why is it scary? It's scary because we don't know where we're going. I didn't have any direction on where I wanted to be, where I wanted it to go. I just knew it couldn't be back there. But there were things that I did that I didn't realize I was hanging on to. There still is, I'm sure. In fact, I'm positive. But we won't get into all that. I mean, we all have it. We all have it. We have things that we need to work on. You know, my annoyance. I'm just working on my driving right now. That's why I continue to make that an example tonight. Is because I'm working on that. I'm working on not getting upset with people because they're all just living their lives. They have no idea that I'm even there. That's the truth of it. Now, if I can look at it like that more often, I would get angry less. I would feel poorly less. Feel me? Yeah? Okay. Therefore, it seems plain that few of us can quickly or easily become ready to aim at spiritual or moral perfection. We want to settle for only as much perfection as will get us by in life. According, of course, to our various and sundry ideas of what will get us by. So the difference between the boys and the men is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective and for the perfect objective, which is God. And there it is. We've almost come full circle because I started talking about that very beginning of this session, right? We've become children to men. So instead of wanting to work for what I want all the time, all of a sudden I start to strive for what God wants me to strive for. I start to work for something that doesn't provide me with some joy or provide me with some gift. I just start to do this naturally. But that takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. The difference between the children and the adults is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective and the perfect objective, which is God. And what is God? God is love. That is a perfect objective. God is love. And where can I find that? Well, we've talked about that too. Deep down in every man, woman, or child is the fundamental God. It's in me. And if I can start staying willing to be of better character, I can practice this enough that it starts to become a natural way of my life. My thinking now starts to change. You see? Remember the doctor's opinion when it starts telling me that I need a psychic change, right? Well, now we're starting to see that come true. When we start character building, our mind starts to change. The way that I view life starts to change. I don't want to be better when I'm behind the wheel for any other reason than I just know it's negative. There's no benefit for me. Think about it. What's the benefit for me to stop calling a guy a dick in my truck? I'm not hurting anyone except me, right? They don't hear me. They don't see me. I'm not harming. But I know that's not how God wants me to feel all the time. That's a psychic change. I want to change that behavior because I know that that's what God wants from me. And if I can do that, maybe I can be of better help to others more often. And that comes naturally. That's also in a step later, where this becomes a working part of our minds. But it takes practice, and that's why we're still at step 6. That's why we're still at step 7. That's why we got to clear up some things and understand brotherly love and perseverance. We've got to understand those things. Find compassion for other human beings before we can actually practice it enough that God starts really saying, dude, you're doing it. And I feel that. I start to feel that. And there's a switch that goes off. And I can't tell you when it went off. I really can't. What I can tell you is I've had a psychic change. I want to live my life for God. I want to live my life to be helpful to my brothers, to my sisters. I want to love you because I know that that's what God wants from me. And I believe I owe it. And sometimes it doesn't make me feel better. And that's okay. There's nights where I don't want to be here. That's a fact. But I show up. And it's never a second thought. It's natural. Why? Because I've worked these principles and this integrity long enough that it's become a part of me. And that's the entire goal. That's what step 6 wants us to become. It wants us to become willing. After this step, we start learning about the work to get there, right? But this step is all about becoming willing. Willing to start bringing back the way that I see life to my basic instincts that were intended for me in the first place. How do we get there? Well, Bill and I will discuss that more next week. God, the perfect objective, which is God, that can be found within ourselves, is pure love. Many will ask at once, how can we accept the entire implication of step 6? Well, that is perfection. This sounds like a hard question, but practically speaking, it really isn't. Only step one. Only step one. Where we made the 100% admission we were powerless over alcohol can be practiced with absolute perfection. Every single day I get up, I remind myself that I'm an alcoholic and it's not okay for me to drink today. It's not okay for me to use drugs today because I am completely powerless. And it's not an option anymore. God, please help me achieve that today. 100% every single day. The remaining 11 steps state perfect ideals. They are goals toward which we look and the measuring sticks by which we estimate our progress. Man, I love that. These principles are my measuring sticks on how I gauge my progress in recovery, in this design for living. How well am I doing? Well, I looked at myself when I was calling that guy an idiot in traffic today. But literally 30 seconds into it, I went, whoa, you're doing it again. God, please help me with this. And I get to look at myself and go, you know what? That's improvement. Good job. Keep it up. And I slow the truck down and I just ease off on the gas and I ease off on the temper. And I remember that I'm on my way to do some beautiful work with some beautiful people. That's what I focus on. And that is the gauge. Am I growing or am I not? It was a lot better than yesterday when I fingered a guy too. You know, it's growth. It's a measuring stick. I fingered a lot of guys, let me tell you. I think that's the wrong term. I'm always, gave lots of guys the finger. Yeah. My daughters are always like, Dad, you can't say that like that anymore. I'm like, why not? Because it sounds like you're fingering some dude, man. Like, stop it. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you guys are twisted. But now I get it. Okay. I was wondering why everyone was, for you Zoom people were laughing at me every time I said it. So then I remembered, oh shit, I'm saying it wrong. Okay. When I give people the finger in my truck all the time. That's how I'm supposed to say it, I guess. Is that right? Yeah, is that better? Yeah, okay. All right. I give them the bird. I flip them the bird. Yeah, there you go. That's all I'm going to say from now on because that is embarrassing. It's embarrassing when your 24-year-old daughter's like, Dad, Jesus, what are you saying? But this is how we gauge our growth. Eh? If we could gain any real advantage in the use of this step on problems other than alcohol, we shall need to make a brand new venture into open-mindedness. You see, I was open to the term fingering somebody, meaning something completely different in this generation. You know what I'm talking about. You used to say it too, Dave. I'm open to it. I can laugh at myself today. I can laugh and go, okay, I'll change. I'll change. We shall need to raise our eyes towards perfection, and be ready to walk in that direction. That's all. That is all we have to do. We have to wake up every morning and try and be the best versions of ourselves. Here's a trick on how to get better at that. Surround yourself with really positive people. Successful people don't focus on negative things. Successful people focus on the positive and they reach for that. And they surround themselves with people who have reached it or are reaching for it. When I am constantly focused on changing the negative behavior will continue to haunt me. So what is the goal when I'm getting upset and flipping people the bird in my truck? Well, it's exactly that. What's the positive? It's to be kind to all humanity, to be compassionate, To recognize that that guy in front of me that's swerving in and out and speeding around might have a daughter at the children's hospital he's trying to go see. I don't know what his deal is. It's none of my business. Being kind, being accepting, and understanding that I'm not the be-all, end-all is more of a positive outlook, right? Be kind, be tolerant of others. Another statement that came from just a couple chapters ago. Tolerance of others is our code, right? There's little beautiful, Billy used to call them, I like to drop little bombs in people's lives, right? And some of you have heard him say that. And I love that because it's so true. When I'm talking to people, I drop those little bombs. Tolerance of others is our code. And here's what can happen if we aren't tolerant, and then you drop some more bombs of what's going to happen to them in the future if they're not. And guess what? If they don't learn the lesson, they come back to you. You were right. Well, I know. I've lived it. I know. I've watched hundreds of other people I've worked with live it. I'm not telling you this to hear my own voice. I'm not saying this stuff to you because I want to be superior to you. I'm telling you because I care. And I have found that this is real. What do you got? Can you pass him the... Thank you, dear.
I'm not sure if I heard this here. I think it was at a meeting, but someone said for the traffic thing, if you visualize or picture somebody with a big pot of hot soup in their car, that might help. Like they could have some hot soup and they're trying not to spill it and they're not totally retarded.
Oh, okay. I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
Hot soup. You hear that? Maybe I should drive around like I have hot soup in my car. Huh? That might even be a better idea. Somehow I have to find kindness, though, right? Somehow I have to be tolerant of the people around me. I never felt, I was using at the time, you guys, and I'm going to tell you a little story. I was getting high on crack cocaine, and I was in a full on psychosis. I was thinking the Hawks was after me, and there were drones following my truck. And I mean, wow, can you imagine thinking that I was that important that the city of Calgary would spend that kind of money to follow me around? But anyhow, I was in full on psychosis, and I was in rush hour traffic, and I looked around, and I realized, and I think that this might have been a gift from a higher power, but I realized that nobody around me, in the hundreds and hundreds or thousands of cars that were surrounding me in rush hour traffic, there wasn't a single person that knew who I was, where I was going, what I was up to. And even more so, there's not a single one of them that cared. It made me feel right-sized. It was probably one of the things I needed to feel. It started the path for me. It wasn't right away, but it started a path for me towards recovery because I had recognized how small and unimportant I actually was, and how very important I was to the few people in my circle. And I still look on that day and I think about how insignificant I actually am. And that is a good place to start. But I also like to think about how significant I can be in someone else's life if I choose to show up. And that's what I focus on. How can I be more significant in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life? What can I do to show you love? And it comes in so many different ways. There's a guy here, I don't know, you guys probably won't know him because he's not in the fellowship, but he volunteers at this place at Central United Church, and I love this guy. His name is Johnny, and I call him Johnny Hockey. And he sticks around here to help every Thursday night, and he does a tremendous amount of volunteer work at Central United Church for next to nothing. They feed him sometimes, and he helps. He gets to do all sorts of neat things, through being around here, and he does this hockey and floor hockey stuff, and he gets to go bowling sometimes. But this guy, he just wants to help. And he's a guy that every week needs a ride home. And I'm headed in that direction. And I'm not saying this to get any type of feedback or a pat on the back, but I recognized that he needed a ride, and so I started to give him a ride. And I give Johnny a ride every week. And that is cool, but here's the gift. Johnny struggles with a bit of a disability, and that type of disability always scared me before. And it comes from some stuff that I did when I was a kid that I'm not proud of, and it affected me greatly all my life, like to a point where I couldn't watch movies that had that disability in it. I couldn't be around people that had that type of disability. It freaked me out. And I got to spend the last dozen or more weeks with Johnny Hockey for half an hour, 45 minutes, taking him home and talking, and we become friends. And I got to show up for a little thing for me. It was just a token of love, right? To give this guy a ride home. But what has happened is, not only has that been a good gift for him to get a ride home and get a new friend and stuff, but God saw fit to relieve me of a sickness that I had from childhood. Just by showing up. Just by showing up in someone else's life. Can you imagine? I am living proof that God exists. I am nothing. I'm nothing. I'm not telling you I give him a ride to get kudos for giving a guy a ride. That's nothing to me. But because I showed up, my God saw fit to relieve my pain. And I love spending that time with Johnny now. Love it. I don't know if he can hear me out there or not, but yeah, you can hear me. That's good. Love you, Johnny. Thank you. Yeah. That's what happens when we turn into men. We turn into women. Instead of being girls and boys, we get to grow up. We get to naturally work on being better human beings. The building of character is so important to the change of our minds. It is so important. I'll never be perfect, but I'm damn well going to try every single day to get there. Looking again. Oh, so the only question, it will seldom matter how haltingly we walk. The only question will be, are we ready? And I can tell you, I am ready. I'm ready. Are you? Right on. I see some people. I'm ready too. We'll walk this thing together, okay? Looking again at those defects we are still unwilling to give up. We ought to erase the hard and fast lines that we have drawn. Perhaps we shall be obliged in some cases still to say, this I cannot give up, but maybe we should not say to ourselves, I will never give it up. Open-mindedness. Maybe we can. Maybe we can give it up. Let's dispose of what appears to be a hazardous open end we might have left. It is suggested that we ought to become entirely willing to aim toward perfection. We note that some delay, however, might be pardoned. That word, in the mind of a rationalizing alcoholic, could certainly be given a long-term meaning. He could say, how very easy. Sure, I'll head towards perfection, but I'm certainly not going to hurry any. So when we go through these steps and we get to this point and they say, hey man, it's okay. I know you'll never reach perfection. And I've talked about not reaching perfection, but aiming for it and, and trying. And I'm saying here in the previous paragraph, I can't give this up yet. We've got to be very, very careful with that. This is an ominous warning. Whether it sounds like it or not, it is a very ominous warning. We as alcoholics exaggerate everything, as we've discussed, or we underdevelop things. And more often than not, we over-exaggerate them. And for this type of thing, if we over-exaggerate taking our time with personal growth and character building, we might die. Because drinking and drugging is for us to die. It is that important. I believe that with all of my heart. And yes, this is only my opinion, but I am telling you that in 9 years, there is nothing I doubt less. Maybe I can postpone dealing with some of my problems indefinitely. That's what we end up saying because we exaggerate it. And of course, this won't do. Such a bluffing of oneself will have to go the way of many other pleasant rationalizations. And what does that mean? Such a bluffing of oneself. Well, now we reach the honesty part again. We've talked about willingness. We've talked about open-mindedness. We've talked a little bit about honesty, but here it is again. We're going to be dishonest with ourselves, and if we are, we're looking for trouble. That's all it's saying. I won't beat a dead horse. At the very least, we shall have to come to grips with some of the worst character defects and take action toward their removal as quickly as we can. See, these are directions. Remember, these are directions. It is our instinct to get what we want. It is our instinct to be secure in life. It is our instinct to reproduce. But we're so used to overindulging, it has become toxic. And the directions are telling me, just make a start. Make a start at the worst ones. You know, if beating people up on the street gets you in jail and you just sobered up, but you want to knock some of these clowns out that are sitting in the meetings because you think they looked at you funny or whatever, right? I've been there, guys. Try and get rid of that one as quick as you can because it's pretty easy. Quit throwing punches. Quit striking other human beings, right? Quit sleeping with women every chance you get, or men, to get what you want. I mean, these are glaring rationalizations. These are glaring defects, and we have to be rid of the glaring ones so that we can open ourselves up to start learning more. We can open ourselves up to more of God's light, more of God's grace, so that we can start feeling good about what we're doing so that eventually in time we can get to that next level where we have a complete psychic change and we start doing it naturally. But we'll never get there. We'll never get there unless we start with the most glaring ones. The directions tell me all I've got to do is start to try and change the most glaring shittiness about myself. Make an attempt to start being a better human being. That seems pretty decent, eh? That seems a little more manageable, don't you think? Yeah, it isn't, but it seems that way. It's not easy changing everything about myself. It's not easy unlearning behaviors that I have acted out on for 44 years. It's certainly not easy being rid of pain from trauma as a child. It's not easy loving myself when I was so wrong for so long. But this program gives you that, and I am living proof. I love myself today. The moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. So this is closing that open-ended thing. It's saying, you know what, if it's going to take some time, that's okay, but do not dawdle. Do the best that you can to work on your defects of character. Open your mind and stay in that frame of thinking. Delay is dangerous and rebellion may be fatal. This is the exact point at which we abandon limited objectives and move towards God's will for us. When I open my mind to change, God already starts working in my life. And when I work at change really hard, when I work at becoming a better guy, God has given me so many things. I talked earlier about that 3 years of recovery, humbling me, constant pain, going to Bill's office, bitching, why can't I get a job back in my industry? Why do I have to suffer so much? And finally, my good friend Bill said, Gord, it sounds like a lot of self-will to me. And I recognized that's exactly what it was. All the other aspects that I started building character in, my relationships with my wife and my daughters and my friends and my family, you know, I gave all of that to God. My recovery, I was of service. I was giving of myself. It was amazing. I was head of the chair of the area H&I for a fellowship. I'm not allowed to say. But I got to go to treatment centers and facilities all over Alberta and speak to people. I grew. Everything else in my life was turning into gold. And that one aspect of my life that I thought I could control, because I was so successful before, I'm going to make that happen again. Why isn't this happening for me, Bill? Well, because you're self-willing it, Gord. Holy shit. 3 years it took me to learn that lesson. It was painful. Very quickly after I prayed to God to take that aspect of my life as well, it immediately started getting better. I never once after that day went and bitched to Bill that my life wasn't good enough again. Did I, Bill? No. Today, after almost 9 years of trying to build character, my life is amazing. But I keep trying because there's always something more to do. There's always something I can achieve. There's always someone else I can help. I'm just going to keep doing that. Step 6 is, it's the pathway. It's the pathway to reset that way of thinking. And it starts with step 6, which is the willingness and open-mindedness. The action will come later, and we'll talk more about that next week. What time is it? Oh, wow. I did pretty good, Bill. It's 9:10, and I'm done. Wow. Thank you guys very much for listening. That was emotional for me. Very emotional for me. I appreciate you hanging around.